All right, let's dive into one of the oldest and honestly one of the deepest questions we could ever ask. What's the deal with your mind and your body? I mean, your thoughts, your feelings, your sense of you. How does that connect to the physical stuff, the brain and bones that make you up? Are they two totally different things, or are they just one and the same?
To really get into this, we have to start with this awesome phrase from the philosopher Gilbert Ryle. He called it the dogma of the ghost and the machine, and he coined that term to push back against a really popular, really old idea about what we are.
So let me just ask you straight up, does it feel like you're a kind of conscious ghost, an inner voice, a pilot, that's steering this complicated biological machine we call a body? That very feeling, that intuition, is right at the heart of a philosophical battle that's been going on for literally thousands of years.
Okay, so to wrap our heads around this whole showdown, we first need to meet the two main competitors. Think of it like this. You've got Team Ghost on one side and Team Machine on the other.
So, Team Ghost, their official name is dualism. And this is the idea that the mental world, your thoughts, your consciousness, is a fundamentally different kind of thing, totally separate from the physical world of your brain and your body. We're talking two completely distinct kinds of existence.
And then you've got Team Machine. Their view is called monism, and the most common version of it is materialism. And this side argues, nope, there's only one kind of existence, and it's all physical. Your mind, your consciousness, every single thing you feel, it's all just a super complex result of physical stuff happening inside your brain.
Now, this whole argument is anything but new. It's kind of like this epic intellectual relay race that kicked off more than 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece, with two of the absolute heavyweights of philosophy.
First to grab the baton for team dualism is Plato. He was convinced that the soul is this immortal, non-physical thing, and he believed it came from a perfect, heavenly place he called the world of forms. So for Plato, our body isn't who we really are. It's just a temporary prison that our eternal soul is trapped in.
And Plato's proof for this was actually pretty clever. He asked, how do we know what a perfect circle is? Think about it. You've never actually seen one. Every circle you've ever seen in the real world is a little bit imperfect. His answer was that we're not learning about perfection, we're remembering it. And this recollection, he argued, proves that our soul must have existed somewhere before we were born, a place where it saw these perfect ideas.
But then, who steps up to challenge him? None other than Plato's own star student, Aristotle. He took the baton for team materialism, looked at what his teacher was saying, and basically said, hold on, where's the evidence for this whole other world?
Aristotle's comeback is captured perfectly in his analogy of a stamp and wax. He said the soul isn't some separate thing living inside the body. No, it's the form of the body. It's what makes the body what it is. You can't separate the shape a stamp makes from the wax itself, right? In the same way, Aristotle argued, you can't just pull the soul out of a living body.
So this is the original split, the ancient Greek divide. You've got Plato, who sees the soul as this separate, eternal prisoner in a cell. And then you have Aristotle, who sees it as the very imprint, the inseparable essence of the body itself. This argument basically set the stage for the next 2,000 years of debate.
Okay, let's jump forward in time. We're going to fast forward to the 17th century, where the philosophical baton gets passed to René Descartes. And what he does is give dualism a massive reboot, updating it for the new age of science.
Descartes came up with this really powerful logical argument. He said, look, any physical object, your brain, for instance, can be divided. You can cut it in half, into quarters, and so on. But what about your mind, your consciousness? Can you have half of a thought? It doesn't seem like it. It doesn't take up space, and you can't divide it. So he points to this rule in logic, Leibniz's law, which says if two things are truly identical, they have to share all the same properties. Well, since one thing is divisible and the other isn't, they can't be the same thing. Boom. Mind and body must be separate. And you have to admit, that argument feels pretty solid, right? It seems almost airtight. But it didn't take long for other thinkers, the materialists, to start poking some pretty serious holes in it. The machine was ready to fight back.
The first huge blow came from this absolutely brilliant thinker, Princess Elizabeth of Bohemia. She wrote to Descartes and asked him this devastatingly simple question. Okay, if the mind is a non-physical ghost, how exactly does it pull the levers on the physical machine? How can a thought, which has no physical properties, make your actual physical arm pick something up? This is now famously known as the interaction problem.
And modern physics just makes this problem 1,000 times harder for dualism.
The laws of thermodynamics tell us that the physical universe is a closed system. You can't just create energy out of thin air. But if a non-physical mind were to cause a neuron to fire, it would have to magically inject new energy into the physical world, which would violate the fundamental laws of physics as we know them.
And this brings us full circle, right back to Gilbert Ryle. He argued that Descartes' entire way of thinking was built on a huge logical error, what he called a category mistake.
Ryle's analogy for this is just perfect. Imagine you're giving someone a tour of a university. You show them the libraries, the labs, the lecture halls, all the buildings. And then, at the end of the tour, they turn to you and ask, "Okay, this is all great, but where is the university?" You'd realize they've made a mistake. They think the university is another building, just like a library, but it's not. The university is the concept that organizes all those things. Ryle said Descartes made the exact same mistake with the mind.
And since then, modern science has just kept piling on. Descartes said the mind couldn't be divided, but neuroscientists studying split brain patients have found that consciousness itself seems to be divisible. He trusted his own self-awareness, but psychology has shown us there are vast unconscious processes driving our behavior. Even his logic has a problem. It's called the masked man fallacy. Just because I can imagine the masked man and my father as two separate people doesn't prove they are two separate people. It might just be my father wearing a mask.
So, with all of that, case closed, did Team Machine win? Is the ghost finally gone? Well, not so fast. Let's bring this relay race into the 21st century, because this is where things get really fascinating.
The scientist and well-known materialist, Richard Dawkins, offers a really helpful, modern way to think about this. He basically says there are two different things people mean when they say soul. There's soul one, the supernatural, separate ghost in the machine thing. He rejects that completely. No evidence. But then there's soul two, the soul as a kind of powerful metaphor for our personality, our humanity, the essence of who we are. And that, he says, is a totally valid and meaningful idea.
But the real, lingering mystery today was laid out perfectly by the philosopher David Chalmers. He split the problem in two. First, there's the easy problem, and it's not actually easy, but it's solvable. That's figuring out the mechanics of the brain, how it stores memories, processes information, and so on. Science is making amazing progress there. But then there's the hard problem, and that is, why does all that physical brain activity produce a subjective inner feeling? Why does it feel like something to see the color blue or to taste a strawberry?
And that, right there, is where we are today. The great philosophical relay race is still going. We've gone from Plato's soul trapped in a body all the way to mapping the neural networks of the brain. We understand the machine in ways we never thought possible, but that ghost, that inner, subjective feeling of what it's like to be you, is as elusive as ever.
So, I'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. Imagine that one day, science could create a perfect atom-by-atom map of your brain in a single moment. Would that map, that complete physical description, ever contain the feeling of joy you get from a song, or the ache of sadness, or just the simple, undeniable experience of what it feels like to be you? The answer to that is still one of the biggest mysteries out there.